Hello, I'm Chris Osmond, and this is Solutions. Enough complaining, let's fix America. Today is April 29th, 2020, and I would like to talk about or expand upon something I touched on yesterday, and that's why the relief efforts for COVID-19 aren't getting to the majority of the people. And why most of that money is going to the wealthiest people in this country or the wealthiest corporations in this country. Um, the reason behind that is capitalism. Capitalism, as a feature, has the scarcity built into it. It's not a bug of capitalism. It's not anomalous for capitalism to have deregulation, to have all the money going, the excessive debt in this country. It's not a bug to have college debt that's out of control, to have credit card debt that's out of control, to have people defaulting on loans, call ARTO loans, and things like that to a record amount these days. That's all a feature of capitalism because scarcity is built into capitalism. And by that, I mean we can look at the one of the terms that I talked about yesterday, which is if you're not growing, you're dying. And basically, that applies to not only corporations, but it applies to individuals. As we look across this country and we see that 40 million of us face food insecurities on a daily basis. Americans have become very um, sedate and not really paying attention to what our leaders have been doing over the course of the past 20, 30, 40 years, which is to take more money out of their pockets and put it into the pockets of the wealthy, or more accurately, into the offshore bank accounts of a lot of the wealthy. Now, not all of the wealthy are bad. I will admit that. There's a group called Patriotic Millionaires. You can look them up on the internet, and they're basically trying to push for higher taxes on themselves and trying to push for the disbursement of wealth to be more equitable across the nation. Something that's definitely not going on right now. And we'll get to that later when we talk about the relief efforts that Congress and Senate and the president, basically our government, has passed over the past few weeks. Past few weeks. First, however, I would like to talk about something else that I discussed in the previous video, which is an alternative to capitalism, or crapitalism as I call it, because it does not help most people. Because as I said before, it has a built-in scarcity. And we'll get to that eventually. I need to collect all my thoughts about capitalism and the woes that it forces upon people, or the ills that it forces upon our nation. But right now, let's talk about one of the alternative economic systems to capitalism. It's a system that was come up that was came that a gentleman I first heard about it through a gentleman named Jacques Fresco. He has a website. It's called the Venus Project. You should look it up, and it's not just informative, but it's actually very entertaining. He has some videos of some models that he created, doing like stop animation of a future society or a future city, the design of a future city, which was very impactful on me, and I think it will help you enlighten everybody else on what a resource-based economy is. Um, Basically, a resource-based economy is taking all the resources of, let's say, America, and instead of letting most of the resources go to a minority of people, those resources are allocated to wherever they are most needed. And one of the arguments that he made before his death in 2017 was that we now have the logistics to be able to carry out something like a resource-based economy with where we could get those resources that are needed here or there to here or there, instead of it all being hoarded and collected by a very few. So in the resource-based economy, what you do is you have resource centers. He even designed cities to work with this resource-based economy. You have city centers where it determines what people need for that city. So if if your city has a need for, let's say, screwdrivers, Instead of everybody in the city buying screwdrivers, the money goes into a pool to buy a bunch of screwdrivers. And you have resource centers where if you need a screwdriver, you go to the resource center. Now, a screwdriver might be a small thing, but think about how much money would have been saved had we not had to buy screwdrivers that sit in the drawer for the most part. That's why I use that as an example. Most people buy a screwdriver. It sits in the drawer. They use it every once in a while. Now, consider this. Imagine that instead of using a screwdriver, you come up with a project that you need. You've saved the money on all these tools that you haven't had to buy, including a screwdriver. Now, you go to a resource center. You go on, sign up on like the library's website. You go to this resource center online and you say, oh, I need a screwdriver, I need a hammer, I need this tool, I need that tool. Now, what you do then is you go to the resource center because you've put your order in for these items, and you get those items. You you finish your project, then you return those tools. Now, of course, there's going to be items that you don't rely on a resource center for, things like dishes and silverware and things that you use on a daily basis. But look around your house. There are so many things, so many items that serve no utility for at least 90% of the time that you have them. And instead of wasting the money on that, instead of wasting the manufacturing on screwdrivers, on hammers, or certain tools that you don't use every day, that money saved. It goes into your pocket. And then everybody gets taxed, of course, to develop these resource centers. Now, the resource centers could work like when there's an emergency. Basically, the resource center say you need a screwdriver, but 10,000 people in the city need a screwdriver, but you only have 7,000 screwdrivers at your resource center. Well, then your resource center contacts neighboring resource centers, and they provide the excess screwdrivers that they don't need for this week or month to your resource center. And then in that way, you get the screwdrivers you need. You save the money on the tools that you didn't have to buy and only need to be loaned out at a particular time. And as I said, this kind of system, we have the logistics to be able to do all this. If you look at companies like Walmart, they have distribution centers all over the place, or Amazon. They have distribution centers all over the place. They can get you your items in a day now, sometimes the same day. So if they can do that, then a resource-based economy is very feasible right now. Now, you can go learn more about it, as I said, from the Venus Project. I think it's the venusproject.org, but just Google the Venus Project. It's very interesting stuff. It's, like I said, it's also entertaining, and it's something that's well worth looking into. And it, like I said, this program is, or this video series is to offer solutions, whether they be mine or whether they be others. And I do believe that the Venus Project is something that everybody should look into, because right now, capitalism is failing us all in a big way. Our leaders are failing us all in a big way. And that leads me to the next thing that I'd like to talk about, and that is, why isn't Washington helping out the majority of the people during a pandemic? Now, in 2008, they didn't help the people out either. The majority of the income that was during the recovery went to 1% of the people. That's why things like Occupy Wall Street came about. Those people, to me, Occupy Wall Street was one of the last peaceful movements to try to stop inequality, wealth inequality. And look what they did to those people. They called them hippies, rapists. They pepper sprayed them. And those people, for the most part, were peaceful protesters that were trying to help out you and me. And we all let them down. I think one of the shortcomings of Occupy Wall Street was the fact that they never really expressed any particular demands, other than to raise awareness of the wealth inequality in America, and to try to get, I think their hope, the people who started, one of their hopes was to try to get people who could address this problem of inequality to come out and to offer their solutions. But like I said, the media bashed them. Our leaders kind of ignored what was going on, just like they ignored what was going on with the water protectors in North over the North Dakota Access Pipeline. Why do our leaders ignore those people who are out there fighting for the majority of the rest of us? It doesn't make any sense. We need new leaders, and we need them now. Something needs to change in America because America is falling down and our leaders are letting us down and have been letting us down for decades. Look, I don't like Donald Trump any more than anybody else out there, but he's a symptom of the problem because since World War II, America has gone to wars all over the world, and it's been illegal to do so because Congress is the entity that is supposed to declare war. The president executes those wars, but Congress is supposed to declare those wars. And Congress has fallen down in that respect, in that they have not declared war and they have not held any president's feet to the fire. So to me, like I said, Trump he's a terrible person. No, hands down, he's a terrible person. But he is only a symptom of what the system has allowed to fester and grow over the past 20, 30, 40 years. Sorry. So now we get to the stimulus packages that have been passed to assist against the coronavirus. Why are they continuing to give more money to big business? And they say it's small business, but I've gone on this small business website, and they have, and I've been on webinars with these people, and you can hear the desperation in these small businesses' voices, and you can hear the frustration in those people who are running these webinars because they don't have answers for a lot of this stuff. Because our government is not providing that much money for small business or for individuals, as a matter of fact. Instead, we're going on the fourth care package that the government is passing, and it's into the trillions and trillions of dollars that's going to big corporations, that's going to supposedly small corporations that are getting millions of dollars, instead of going to the individuals, instead of going to universal basic income, which would have kept people at home. Because imagine you have all your debts to pay off, and instead of you being able to stay home, you have to figure out a way to raise money, to get money so you can pay your bills, so you don't get kicked out by some uncaring landlord who's not going to find another tenant anyway in this economic environment. Instead of helping the people, Congress, the Senate, and the president and the executive branch, they have all been putting more money into the pockets of those who don't need it. Now, imagine what this does. Let's look at a game of Monopoly. The game is over once one player has all the money and all the property. And that's basically what's happening in America, because as our government continues to give more relief to the rich, those rich are able to buy up the failing businesses, the small businesses, the local businesses. They're able to buy up more of the commercial real estate because the people who have businesses in that commercial real estate can no longer afford their rent. So their rent goes down, and then their landlord cannot pay the mortgage on their commercial property. And so what happens? You get companies like Blackstone. I think that's the one. It's the giant real estate. They come in and buy that property up. Now, that landlord, he is in no better shape than you are because he has expenses as well, just like you have expenses. It goes up the food chain, and it's only the top that eat. The rest of us are left with scraps, and those scraps are becoming more scarce and more scarce. You keep hearing about, I saw a story where they were talking about how farmers are destroying crops because it's more cost effective to destroy those crops than to try to store those crops and try to sell those crops to a nation that's going into a depression. Now, Wall Street, of course, is doing well. It does well when the country does poorly. When you hear about all these unemployment, all these people being laid off, why is it that Wall Street soars? Yeah, it's understandable why it does, and that's because you have all these employees who are being laid off. So when that company that laid off all the people report their quarterly earnings, they look more profitable because their payroll, which is the biggest expense for most companies, their payroll is low because they've laid everybody off. So they look more profitable, but they haven't really sold any more products. Why is it why is it that the Wall Street is soaring every time you hear some tiny news about coronavirus cures or vaccines or something like that? And it also soars when you hear some terrible news about how companies don't make any aren't making any money. They didn't make any money in the last quarter. There's a reason for that. It's all speculation. It's all basically these people, investors, have kind of been brainwashed because none of them really know the valuation of most of these companies. When they show bad revenue, the stocks go up. When they show good revenue, the stocks go up. That makes no sense. I mean, we did have this big crash recently, but that was because of the catalyst of coronavirus. Now it's rebounding, and it's not really rebounding for any reason because most of the news that you hear about individual companies has been terrible. But anyway, that's that. I'll say for a more in depth in another video. Um, but anyway, as I was saying, these relief bills that they're not impacting the majority of this country, and eventually, the wealthy are going to see the error of their ways because eventually people are going to get fed up with it, and they will start to look to the real villains in that have come out of the woodwork, that have been exposed. Because, like I said, our government isn't even trying to provide relief for the majority of us. They're not even trying. They give these really lame excuses for all this, why they can't help out the masses. But then again, they give all trillions of dollars to corporations. Those two things don't add up. You can't say that you can't help the people out, but with billions of dollars, but you can help out supposedly small businesses with trillions of dollars. That makes no sense, and it's not sustainable. And it is exposing the fraud that our current leaders represent. Now, let me go on to something else. This is something that one of the ideas that I would like to propose, or I have proposed. It's a petition / legislation that I posted on the internet years ago, at least 3 years ago. It's called "In the Job Creator Lie." You can Google it. It's on signon.org. It used to be called moveon.org. But you can look it up, and read it, and if you agree, sign it and pass it on to friends and family and neighbors or whoever. But basically, what the petition says is that instead of us, it tries to expose the lie of there being a job creator. Jobs are created when there's a need for a product. You will not find an employer who creates a job when they don't have any need for their product or service. That doesn't even make sense. So consumers create jobs, not the rich and not corporations. The corporations' jobs are created out of a need for a product or service. So that's the first point. Secondly, if you have what are called job creators, if the job of a job creator is to create jobs, then aren't they a bad job creator if they create crappy jobs? Because 44% of America before COVID-19 were only making $18,000 a year. I don't know what city or what state even people could survive off of $14,000 a year. That makes no sense in our society right now, other than that's the increase in credit card debt. Because instead of you making the money and then you buying your groceries with money you've made, you now have to put it on the credit card. So you go into debt in that way. And that debt basically represents a decline in one's future financially. If you have debt today, you buy something on a credit card, tomorrow you're going to have to pay that credit card off. And the more debt you go into, the more you risk your future being in jeopardy. Now, my petition talks about tax breaks for the wealthy. And basically, tax breaks for the wealthy make absolutely no sense if you consider what they entail. And that's this. If a tax break given to the wealthy has to be offset by higher taxes somewhere else, because the government has a set budget that it's supposed to work within. And if that budget has a shortfall because we've given tax breaks to some of the rich, they have to make that money up by taxing someone else. And it's usually the middle class or the poor. So our taxes go up, the richest taxes go down. And let me give you this analogy. A tax break for the rich would be like you or me giving someone, let's say, $100 out of my pocket. I give them $100 out of my pocket. Then I tell them, or they say, I will give you back $20, but only after you do some work for me. How does that make sense to anybody? Because that's what a tax break represents. It's me giving my money to some rich person and then them giving some of my money back, but only after I've done some work for them. That makes no sense. And if you break it down, I would love to hear comments about this. I would love to hear people talk about this and refute this, because I don't see it any other way. To me, it's as simple as that. But anyway, so the petition that I have online, as I said, it's called In the Job Creator Lie. And basically it says this: instead of us subsidizing the rich through tax breaks up front and giving them money up front, whether or not they create jobs, because some rich people don't create jobs. Some rich people just take that money and they put it into yachts and whatever other luxuries they want to put it in, or they put it in an offshore bank account. Now, if you instead of us providing those tax breaks up front, let's instead subsidize only those jobs that are created. So let's say you have a rich person that's like, okay, I want to create a job. Okay, create the job. And the government will subsidize that job to whatever, 50% for a year, as long as you maintain that employee for another 2 years. But we'll subsidize your payroll for a certain amount of time, as long as you keep that person on staff for time after that. So, in that way, the arguments that would be that the Republicans always try to say is that job creators need the money so that they can create jobs, so it will trickle down. Okay, well, let them create the jobs first. That way, those rich who do not create jobs but still get that subsidies are no longer getting that subsidies. So we're not giving tax breaks to every rich person. We're only giving tax breaks to those who create jobs. And it's not even tax breaks. It's in the form of subsidies after the job is created. How does that not make sense? You don't get paid for your labor or for your work before you do your job. You get paid afterwards. So a job creator should only get paid or benefit from the jobs that they create after they've created those jobs, not before. And the other argument against that Republicans would not be able to fight against is this: all the rich that do not create jobs, they don't get the tax break. So that's a savings to the country. And since they're conservative economically, they should be okay with that savings. They shouldn't fight it. They should accept it. As far as the Democrats, it would go to the benefit of the majority of the people, and the Democratic Party is supposed to be the party of the people. Now, like I said, if you have time, go look it up. It's called In the Job Creator. I'm going to try to put a link at the end of the video to that petition, and it goes more into detail. And if you have any questions or comments, of course, you can comment on the video. I would love to hear it. Now, I will go in more into the detail into each one of these topics in future episodes. But for now, enjoy your night, and thank you for joining me on Solutions. Enough complaining. Let's fix America. Bye.